Hello everyone and welcome back to First Pages. This week we're going to be reading Redwall by Brian Jacques. This is a classic. I didn't read this when I was a kid, but I remember this story being really popular among my peers when I was young. But this is supposed to be an amazing book. Okay, let's see. It is the summer of the late rose. But a sinister shadow has fallen across the ancient stone abbey of Redwall, even as the gentle mice of Mossflower Wood gathered there to celebrate a year of peace and abundance. For it is rumored that Clooney is coming. Clooney, the terrible one-eyed rat and his battle-season horde. Clooney, whose vow is to conquer Redwall Abbey. The woodland creatures rush to a desperate defense. But what can a abbey of peace-loving mice do against Clooney the Scourge and his army of rats? If only they had the sword of Martin the Warrior, they might have a chance of saving their beloved abbey. But the hiding place of the legendary sword has long been forgotten, even by the wise old mouse, Methuselah. It is his bumbling young apprentice, Marius, who sends out to find the sword, who becomes a most unlikely hero. Teeming with riddles and mysteries, humor and pathos, Redwall is woven by a cast of rich and spirited characters into an unforgettable tapestry of high drama, a novel to be savored by readers of all ages. Okay. Here in the book there's a map of Redwall Abbey and the surrounding countryside, so you can kind of get a picture of what the book is supposed to be. All right. Who says that I am dead, knows not at all. I am, that is, two mice within Redwall. The warrior sleeps, twixt hall and cavern hole. I am, that is. Take on my mighty role, look for the sword, in moonlight streaming forth, at night, when day's first hour reflects the north. From o'er the threshold, seek and you will see. I am, that is, my sword will wield for me. Rhyme from beneath the great hall tapestry. It was the start of the summer of the late rose. Mossflower country shimmered gently in a peaceful haze, bathing delicately at each dew-laden dawn, blossoming through high sunny noontides, languishing in each crimson-tinted twilight that heralded the soft darkness of June nights. Redwall stood foursquare along the marches of the old south border, flanked on two sides by Mossflower Wood's shaded depths. The other half of the abbey overlooked undulating sweeps of meadowland, its ancient gate facing the long dusty road on the western perimeter. From above, it resembled some fabulous dusky jewel, fallen between a green mantle of light silk and dark velvet. The first mice had been built the abbey of red sandstone quarried from pits many miles away in the northeast. The abbey building was covered across its south face by the type of ivy known as Virginia creeper. The onset of autumn would turn the leaves into a cape of fiery hue, thus adding further glory to the name and legend of Redwall Abbey. Book 1. The Wall. Marius cut a comical little figure as he wobbled his way along the cloisters, with his large sandals flip-flopping and his tail peeping from beneath the baggy folds of an oversized novice's habit. He paused to gaze upwards at the cloudless blue sky, and tripped over the enormous sandals. Hazelnuts scattered out upon the grass from the rush basket he was carrying. Unable to stop, he went tumbling, cowl over tail. Bump! The young mouse squeaked in dismay. He rubbed tenderly at his damp snub nose, while slowly taking stock of where he had landed. Directly at the feet of Abbot Mortimer! Immediately, Marius scrambled about on all fours, hastily trying to stuff nuts back into the basket as he muttered clumsily apologies, avoiding the stern gaze of his elder. Sorry, Father Abbot. I tripped, ye see. Trod on my abbot. Father Abbot. Oh dear, I mean— The Father Abbot blinked solemnly over the top of his glasses. Marius again. What a young buffoon of a mouse. Only the other day he had singed old brother Methuselah's whiskers while lighting candles. The elder's stern expression softened. He watched the little novice rolling about on the grass, grappling with large armfuls of the smooth hazelnuts, which constantly seemed to escape his grasp. Shaking his old grey head, Yet trying to hide a smile, Abbot Mortimer bent and helped to gather up the fallen nuts. "Oh, Marius, my son," he said wearily, "when will you learn to take life a little slower, to walk with dignity and humility? How can you ever hope to be accepted as a mouse of Redwall, when you are always dashing about, grinning from whisker to tail like a mad rabbit?" Marius tossed the last of the hazelnuts into the basket, and stood awkwardly, shuffling his large sandals in the grass. How could he say aloud what was in his heart? The abbot put his paw around the young mouse's shoulder, sensing his secret yearnings, for he had ruled Redwall wisely over a great number of years, and gained much experience of mouse life. He smiled down at his young charge, and spoke kindly to him. "Come with me, Marius. It is time we talked together." A curious thrush perching in a gnarled pear tree watched the two figures make their way at a sedate pace in the direction of Great Hall, one clad in the dark greeny brown of the order, the other garbed in lighter green of a novice. They conversed earnestly in low tones. Thinking what a clever bird he was, the thrush swooped down on the basket that had been left behind. Twisters! The basket contained only hard nuts, locked tight within their shells. Feigning lack of interest, lest any other birds had been witness to his silly mistake, he began whistling jauntily a few bars of his melodious summer song, strolling nonchalantly over to the cloister walls in search of snails. It was cool inside the great hall. Sunlight flooded down in slanting rainbow-hued shafts from the high narrow stained-glass windows. A million colored dust motes danced and swirled as the two mice trod into the ancient stone floor. The father abbot halted in front of the wall, which hung a long tapestry. This was the pride and joy of Redwall. The oldest part had been woven by the founders of the abbey, but each successive generation had added to it. Thus the tapestry was not only a priceless treasure, it was also a magnificent chronicle of early Redwall history. The abbot studied the wonderment in Matthias's eyes as he asked him a question, the answer to which the wise mouse already knew. "What are you looking at, my son?" Matthias pointed to the figure woven into the tapestry. It was a heroic-looking mouse, with a fearless smile on his handsome face. Clad in armor, he leaned casually on an impressive sword, while behind him foxes, wild cats, and vermin fled in terror. The young mouse gazed in admiration. "Oh, Father Abbot," he sighed, "if only I could be like Martin the warrior! He was the bravest, most courageous mouse that ever lived!" The abbot sat down slowly on the cool stone floor, resting his back against the wall. "Listen to what I say, Matthias. You have been like a son to me, ever since you first came to our gates as an orphaned woodland mouse, begging to be taken in. Come sit by me, and I will try to explain to you what our order is all about. We are mice of peace. Oh, I know that Martin was a warrior mouse, but those were wild days, when strength was needed, the strength of a champion such as Martin. He arrived here in the deep winter when the founders were under attack from many foxes, vermin, and a great wild cat. So fierce a fighter was Martin that he faced the enemy single-pawed, driving them mercilessly far from Mossflower. During the rout Martin fought a great battle against overwhelming odds. He emerged victorious after slaying the wild cat with his ancient sword, which became famous throughout the land. But in the last bloody combat Martin was seriously wounded. He lay injured in the snow until the mice found him. They brought him back to the abbey and cared for his hurts until he regained his strength. Then something seemed to come over him. He was transformed by what could only be called a mouse miracle. Martin forsook the way of the warrior and hung up his sword. That was when our order found its true vocation. All the mice took a solemn vow never to harm another living creature, unless it was an enemy that sought to harm our order by violence. They vowed to heal the sick, care for the injured, and give aid to the wretched and impoverished. So was it written, and so has it been through all the ages of mousekind since. Today we are a deeply honored and highly respected society. Everywhere we go, even far beyond Mossflower, we are treated with courtesy by all creatures. Even predators will not harm a mouse who wears the habit of our order. They know he or she is one who will heal and give aid. It is an unwritten law that Redwall mice can go anywhere, through any territory, and pass unharmed. At all times we must live up to this. It is our way, our very life." As the abbot spoke, so his voice increased in volume and solemnity. Matthias sat under his stern gaze, completely humbled. Abbot Mortimer stood and put a wrinkled old paw lightly on the small head, right between the velvety ears, now drooping with shame. Once more the abbot's heart softened towards the little mouse. Poor Matthias! Alas for your ambitions! The day of the warrior is gone, my son. We live in peaceful times, thank heaven, and you need only think of obeying me, your abbot, doing as you are bidden. In time to come, when I am long gone to my rest, you will think back to this day, and bless my memory, for then you will be a true member of Redwall. Come now, my young friend, cheer up. It is the summer of the late rose. There are many, many days of the warm sun ahead of us. Go back and get your basket of hazelnuts. Tonight we have a great feast to celebrate, my golden jubilee as abbot. When you have taken the nuts to the kitchen, I have a special task for you. Yes, indeed, I'll need some fine fish for the table. Get your rod and line. Tell Brother Alf that he is to take you fishing in the small boat. That is what young mice like doing, isn't it? Who knows? You may land on a fine trout or some sticklebacks. Run along now, young one. Happiness filled Matthias from tail to whiskers as he bobbed a quick bow to his superior and shuffled off. Smiling benignly, the abbot watched him go. Little rascal! He must have a word with the almoner to see if some sandals could be found that were the right fit for Matthias. Small wonder the poor mouse kept tripping up. 2. The high, warm sun shone down on Clooney the Scourge. Clooney was coming. He was big and tough, an evil rat with ragged fur and curved, jagged teeth. He wore a black eye patch. His eye had been torn out in a battle with the pike. Clooney had lost an eye. The pike had lost its life. Some said that Clooney was a Portuguese rat. Others said he came from the jungles far across the wide oceans. No one knew for sure. Clooney was a bilge rat, the biggest, most savage rodent that ever jumped from ship to shore. He was black, with gray and pink stars all over his huge sleek body, from the tip of his wet nose up past his green and yellow slitted eye, across both his mean, tattered ears, down the length of his heavy vermin-ridden back to the enormous whip-like tail, which had earned him his title, Clooney the Scourge. Now he rode on the back of the hay wagon with his 500 followers, a mighty army of rats, sewer rats, tavern rats, water rats, dockside rats. Clooney's army, fearing yet following him. Redtooth, his second in command, carried a long pole. This was Clooney's personal standard. The skull of a ferret was fixed at the top. Clooney had killed that ferret. He feared no living thing. Wild-eyed, with the terror of rat smell in his nostrils, the horse plunged ahead without any driver. Where the hay cart was taking him was of little concern to Clooney. Straight on the panicked horse galloped, past the milestone lodged in the earth at the roadside, heedless of the letters graven in the stone. Redwall Abbey, 15 miles. Clooney spat over the edge of the cart at the 2 young rabbits playing in a field. Tasty little things. Pity the cart hadn't stopped yet, he thought. The high, warm sun shone down on Clooney the Scourge. Clooney was a god of war. Clooney was coming nearer. 3. Beneath the great hall of Redwall, candles burned bright in their sconces. This was the cavern hall of the mice. What a night it was going to be! Between them, Matthias and Brother Alf had caught and landed a nearly fully grown grayling. They had fought and played the big fish for nearly 2 hours, finally wading into the shallows and dragging it to the bank. It was nearly 2 pounds in weight, a tribute to the Brother Alf's angling skills combined with the youthful muscles of Matthias and their joint enthusiasm. Constance the badger had to be called. Gripping the fish in her strong jaws, she followed the 2 mice to the abbey kitchen and delivered the catch for them. Then she made her farewells. They would see her at the Jubilee Fest that evening, along with many other Mossflower residents who had been invited to share the festivities. Brother Alf and Matthias stood proudly beside their catch by Friar Hugo. Busy as he was, the enormously fat Hugo, who would have done no other title but that of friar, stopped what he was doing. Wiping the perspiration from his brow with a dandelion that he held with his tail, he waddled about, inspecting the fish. Nice shiny scales, bright eyes, beautifully fresh. Friar Hugo smiled so joyfully that his face disappeared amid deep dimples. He shook Alf by the paw and clapped Matthias heartily on the back as he called out between chuckles, "Bring the white gooseberry wine! Fetch me some rosemary, thyme, beechnuts, and honey, quickly! And now, friends, now," he squeaked, waving the dandelion wildly with his tail, "I, Hugo, will create greyling à la Redwall as such will melt in the mouth of mice. Fresh cream! I need lots of fresh cream. Bring some mint leaves, too." They had left Friar Hugo ranting on, delirious in joy, as they both went off to bathe and clean up, combing whiskers, curling tails, shining noses, and the 101 other grooming tasks that Redwall mice always performed in preparation for an epic feast. The rafters of Cavern Hole rang to the excited buzz and laughter of the assembled creatures. Hedgehogs, moles, squirrels, woodland creatures, and mice of all kinds, field mice, hedge mice, dormice, and even family of poor little church mice. Kindly helpers scurried around making everybody welcome. "Hello there, Mrs. Church Mouse. Sit the children down. I'll get them some raspberry cordial." "Why, Mr. Bankful, so nice to see you. How's the back? Better now? Good. Here, try a drop of this peach and elderberry brandy." Matthias's healthy young head was in a whirl. He could not remember ever being so happy in all his life. Winifred the otter nudged him. "I say, Matthias, where's this giant grayling that you and old Alf hooked by the claw? I wished I could land a beauty like that. Nearly a 2-pounder, wasn't it?" Matthias swelled with pride. Such praise, and from the champion fisher herself, an otter! Tim and Tess, the twin church mouse babes, felt Matthias's strong arm muscles and giggled aloud in admiration. He helped to serve them 2 portions of apple and mint ice cream. Such nice little twins. Was it only 3 months ago that he had helped Sister Symphony to get them over tail rickets? How they had grown! Abbot Mortimer sat in his carved willow chair, beaming thanks as one by one the new arrivals laid their simple home-made gifts at his feet. An acorn cup from a squirrel, fishbone combs from the otters, mossy bark sandals made by the moles, and many more fine presents too numerous to mention. The abbot shook his head in amazement. Even more guests were arriving. He beckoned Friar Hugo to his side. A whispered conference was held. Matthias could only hear snatches of the conversation. "Don't worry, Father Abbot. There will be enough for all." "How are the cellar stocks, Hugo?" "Enough to flood the Abbey pond, Father." "And nuts? We must not run short of nuts." "You name them, we've got 'em. Even candied chestnuts and acorn crunch. We could feed the district for a year." "Dairy produce?" "Oh, that. I've got a cheddar cheese that 4 badgers couldn't roll, plus 10 other varieties." "Good, good. Thank you, Hugo. Oh, we must thank Alf and young Matthias for that magnificent fish. What fine anglers they are. There's enough to keep the entire abbey going for a week." "Excellent mice. Well done." Matthias blushed to his tail's end. "The otters! The otters!" A loud, jolly cry went up as 3 otters in clown costumes came bounding in. Such acrobatics! They tumbled, balanced, and gyrated, cavorting comically across the laden tabletops without upsetting as much as a single sultana. They ended up hanging from the rafters by a strand of ivy, to wild applause. Ambrose Spike, the hedgehog, did his party piece. He amazed everyone with his feats of legerdemain. Eggs were taken from a squirrel's ear, a young mouse's tail stood up and danced like a snake. The incredible vanishing shell trick was performed in front of a group of little harvest mice, who kept squeaking, "He's got it hidden in his prickles." But had he? Ambrose made a few mysterious passes and produced the shell, straight out of the mouth, with an awestruck infant mouse. Was it magic? Of course it was. All activity ceased as the great Joseph bell tolled out 8 o'clock from the Abbey belfry. Silently, all the creatures filed to their allotted places. They stood reverently behind the seats with heads lowered. Abbot Mortimer rose and solemnly spread his paws wide, encompassing the festive board. He said the grace. "Fur and whisker, tooth and claw, all who enter by our door, nuts and herbs, leaves and fruits, berries, tubers, plants and roots, silver fish whose life we take, only for a meal to make." This was followed by a loud and grateful Amen. There was a mass clattering of chairs and scraping of forms as everyone was seated. Marius found himself next to Tim and Tess on one paw, and Cornflower Field Mouse on the other. Cornflower was a quiet young mouse, but undoubtedly very pretty. She had the longest eyelashes Marius had ever seen, the brightest eyes, the softest fur, the whitest teeth. Marius fumbled with a piece of celery, and self-consciously turned to see if the twins were coping adequately. You never could tell with those baby church mice. Brother Alf remarked that Friar Hugo had excelled himself, as course after course was brought to the table. Tender freshwater shrimp garnished with cream and rose leaves, deviled parley pears, pearls and acorn puree, apple and carrot chews, marinated cabbage stalks steeped in cream white turnip with nutmeg. A chorus of oohs and ahs greeted the arrival of 6 mice pushing a big trolley. It was the grayling. Wreaths of aromatic steam drifted around the cavern hole. The fish had been baked to perfection. Friar Hugo entered with a slight swagger added to his ungainly waddle. He swept off his chef's cap with his tail and announced in a somewhat pompous squeak, "My Lord Abbot, honored guests from Mossflower area, and members of the Abbey. Ahem! I wish to present my piece de la resistance. Oh, get on with it, Hugo!" After some icy staring to detect the culprit, and several smothered sniggers from around the room, the little fat friar puffed himself up once more and declaimed firmly, "Grayling à de Redwall." Polite but eager applause rippled round as Hugo sliced the fish and placed the first steaming portion onto a platter. With suitable dignity he presented it to the abbot, who thanked him graciously. All eyes were on the father abbot. He took a dainty fork, loaded precariously with steaming fish. Carefully he transferred it from plate to mouth. Chewing delicately, he turned his eyes upwards, then closed them, whiskers a-twitched, jaws working steadily, munching away, his tail curled up, holding a napkin which neatly wiped his mouth. The abbot's eyes reopened. He beamed like the sun on a midsummer morn. Oops. "Quite wonderful, perfectly exquisite, Friar Hugo. You are truly my championed chef. Please serve our guests your masterwork." Any further speech was drowned by hearty cheers. That's going to do the end of our first pages today. I hope you liked it, and as always, this book will be in the library for you to pick up if you wish to read it. Thank you, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.